My name is Marcus, and I want to tell you about the worst year of my life, and the best day of it. I was 14 years old when I walked into Mrs. Patricia Holloway's 7th grade English class for the first time. I remember that morning clearly. I had on a new backpack my dad had bought me the week before. I was nervous the way every kid is nervous on the first day. I sat down in the 3rd row. I put my pencil on my desk, and I waited. Mrs. Holloway walked in, looked at the seating chart, looked up at the class, and her eyes stopped on me. Just for a second. I did not know what that look meant then. I would understand it very well by October. It started small, the way these things always do. The first time she called on me, and I did not answer fast enough, she sighed. A loud, slow, deliberate sigh, the kind that fills a room. She said, "Moving on, someone else." The class laughed a little. I felt my face go hot. I told myself it was nothing. Teachers say, "It is not personal." I told myself that for weeks. By September she had a name for it. She would ask me a question. I would begin to answer. And before I could finish she would say, "Marcus, let us not waste everyone's time today. Let us not waste everyone's time today." She said it so often it became a rhythm, a pattern, a signal to the rest of the class that Marcus was about to do something wrong, and they should prepare to be entertained. Kids laughed. Not all of them, but enough. Enough that the sound of it followed me into the hallway after class and sat next to me at lunch. I want you to understand something about what daily humiliation does to a person. It is not like getting hurt once. A single bad fall, a single bad day. Those things heal. Daily humiliation is different. It is cumulative. Every morning I woke up and the first thought in my head was not what am I going to learn today. It was how many times is she going to do it today. I started sitting in the back. That did not help. She called on the back row. I started not raising my hand at all. That did not help either. She called on people who did not raise their hands. She called on me specifically when she could see I did not know the answer. I believe now that she chose those moments on purpose. I believe she waited for them. In October she crossed a line she could not uncross. We were reading a passage out loud, going around the room. When it was my turn I stumbled on a word. It was peripatetic. I was 14. I had never seen that word before in my life. I sounded it out the wrong way. Mrs. Holloway stopped me. She turned to face the class. She said, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when you do not read at home. This is what a 14-year-old who has given up looks like." Then she looked back at me and said, "Marcus, some people are simply not built for academics. There is no shame in it. But please, for the sake of your classmates, do not hold the rest of us back." The room was silent for 2 full seconds. Then someone in the front row started laughing, and it spread. I sat there and I did not move. I did not cry. Not then. I learned later that there was a girl 3 seats behind me named Destiny, who did not laugh. She stared at the back of Mrs. Holloway's head with an expression that one of the other students later described as like she was memorizing her face. But I did not know that then. I just sat there and I waited for the class to end. I did not tell my father that night. I did not tell him for 3 weeks. My father is not an easy man to bring a problem to. Not because he is cruel, because he is the kind of man who fixes things. And I did not want him to fix this in a way that made it worse. My father, James Carter, had spent 22 years working his way from a classroom aide to a vice principal, to a principal to the district office. He had been elected president of the school board of Jefferson County 2 years before. He was, in the precise and technical sense of the word, Patricia Holloway's boss. He controlled her contract. He voted on her tenure. He chaired the committee that reviewed teacher conduct complaints. He signed off on the professional development budgets that paid for the conferences. She attended every spring. Patricia Holloway had never met my father. She did not know his last name. She did not make the connection between James Carter, the school board president, whose name appeared in the newsletter, and Marcus Carter, the quiet black boy. in the third row of her 7th period English class. I told my father on a Thursday evening in late October. We were eating dinner, and he asked me how school was going, and instead of saying fine, I said nothing for a long time, and then I told him everything. I told him about the sighing. I told him about let us not waste everyone's time. I told him about peripatetic and what she said after I stumbled. I told him about the laughing. I watched my father's face while I talked. He's a man who has spent decades in meetings where he cannot show what he is feeling. He sat very still. He did not interrupt. When I finished, he asked me one question. He said, "Marcus, do you want me to handle this, or do you want to handle it yourself first?" I said I did not know. He said, "Take your time." And then he said something I have never forgotten. He said, "There are two kinds of justice. There is the kind that happens to you, and there is the kind you build. Think about which one you want." I thought about it for 2 more weeks. During those 2 weeks, I did something that surprised me. I started preparing. Every night I read ahead in the textbook. I looked up words I did not recognize. I practiced saying them out loud in my room. I found peripatetic in a dictionary, and I learned its definition, and I wrote a sentence using it. And I read that sentence until I could say it in my sleep. I started taking notes in class. Real notes, not just copying what was on the board. I started doing the extra reading at the end of each chapter that Mrs. Holloway said was optional and that nobody did. I did not know exactly what I was preparing for. I just knew I was preparing. The moment came on a Tuesday in November. Mrs. Holloway was leading a discussion on a short story we had been assigned. She asked the class what the theme of the story was. 3 students gave answers. She rejected all 3. She looked around the room in that way she had. The slow, deliberate scan that always landed on me eventually. She looked at me and she said, "Marcus, what do you think the theme is?" She said it with a small smile that the kids in the front row could see, and that I had learned meant she was expecting me to fail. I looked at my notes. I did not need to look at my notes. I had read the story 4 times. I looked at them anyway because I wanted to take my time. Then I looked up and I said, "The theme is the conflict between personal integrity and social conformity, and how the protagonist's choice to sacrifice one for the other ultimately destroys both." The room was quiet. I kept going. I said, "The author uses the peripatetic movement of the main character through the town, always moving, never settling, to show us that he has no foundation, no sense of self, and by the end that rootlessness is what kills him, not the other characters, not circumstance, but his own inability to stand still and be himself." I stopped. I looked at Mrs. Holloway. Her small smile was gone. She said, "That is correct." She said it the way someone says words they do not want to say. She moved on immediately. After class, Destiny caught up with me in the hallway. She said she had been watching what Mrs. Holloway did to me since September. She said she had been writing it down. A notebook. Dates, times, exact words. She had 31 entries. She handed me a folded piece of paper with her phone number and said, "I think you might need this soon." That weekend I told my father I was ready for him to handle it. I showed him the notebook Destiny had given me. My father read every page. He said nothing while he read. When he finished, he set it down on the kitchen table, and he looked at me and he said, "I am going to need you to trust me, and I am going to need you to be patient." I said okay. The next school board meeting was scheduled for the 2nd Thursday of December. My father placed one item on the agenda under new business. The item was listed as professional conduct review, district teaching staff. He did not list a name. He did not describe the specifics. He called the district's human resources director the night before and told him to be present. He called the superintendent and told him to be present. He did not tell Mrs. Holloway anything. He did not tell the principal of my school anything. He did not tell any of the other board members what the item was about specifically. He simply put it on the agenda and called the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. On a Thursday evening in December, Mrs. Holloway was in that meeting. Teachers often attended board meetings. It was encouraged. She was sitting in the third row of the public gallery with two colleagues when my father walked in, sat down at the head of the table, and called the meeting to order. I know this because I was there. My father had told me I could come. I sat in the back row of the gallery. Mrs. Holloway did not see me. She did not connect me to the man at the head of the table. Not yet. My father worked through the regular agenda items first. Budget updates, facility reports, curriculum approvals. He was methodical and unhurried. He had been running these meetings for 2 years, and he ran them with the quiet authority of someone who knows exactly where every item on the agenda is going. When he reached new business, he paused. He looked at the human resources director. He looked at the superintendent. Then he said, "We have received documented reports of a pattern of conduct toward a student in this district that I believe requires immediate board review." He described the conduct. He did not use my name. He did not use Mrs. Holloway's name at first. He described exactly what she had done, using Destiny's notebook, reading directly from it, with dates: September 9th, September 14th, September 22nd, October 3rd, October 19th. The room was completely silent. The two colleagues sitting next to Mrs. Holloway shifted in their seats. My father read 31 entries. It took 11 minutes. When he finished, he set the notebook down and he said, "This conduct was directed at a 14-year-old student in this district over a period of approximately 10 weeks. It is documented. It is specific. It is ongoing." He paused. Then he said, "The teacher responsible for this conduct is Patricia Holloway, 7th grade English, and the student she targeted is my son." He let that sentence sit in the room for 5 full seconds. Then he said, "I want to be clear that I have recused myself from the formal review process because of my personal relationship to the student involved. The vice president of the board will chair the conduct committee. However, I did not recuse myself from presenting the evidence to this board tonight, because my son deserved to have his story heard in the place where decisions about this district are made." Mrs. Holloway had gone completely still in the third row of the gallery. Her colleagues were looking at her. Everyone in the room was looking at her. She was looking at the man at the head of the table. And I watched the understanding move across her face like weather. The man she had never met. The name she had seen in newsletters. The father of the boy in the third row. All of it connecting at once, in public, in front of the superintendent and the human resources director, and every person in that room. The formal review took 6 weeks. I was not involved in it directly, and I do not know everything that happened behind those closed doors. What I know is the outcome. Mrs. Patricia Holloway received a formal written reprimand that was entered into her permanent personnel file. She was placed on a professional improvement plan requiring quarterly reviews for 2 years. She was removed from her 7th period class and reassigned. I was moved to a different English teacher for the remainder of the year. That teacher, a man named Mr. Okafor, told me on the first day that he had heard I was a strong reader. I did not know what to do with that sentence for a moment. I had not been called a strong anything in a classroom in months. I am not going to tell you that Mrs. Holloway was fired. She was not. I am not going to tell you that what happened to her was as severe as what she did to me. It was not. The humiliation I sat with for 10 weeks in that third row did not disappear because of a formal reprimand. The sound of that classroom laughing did not go away because of paperwork. These things do not work that way. What I can tell you is this. She cannot do to another child what she did to me without that permanent record. Following the complaint, she knows now that students are watching. She knows now that the quiet black boy in the third row might have a father who controls your career. She knows now that destiny exists, that someone was taking notes, that the dates and the exact words can be written down and read aloud in a room full of people who have the power to act, that knowledge changes how a person moves through a classroom. I have to believe that. I choose to believe that. My father said something to me the night after the board meeting. He said, "Marcus, I want you to understand something about what happened tonight. I did not do that for revenge. I did that because institutions only change when people make them uncomfortable enough to change. Discomfort is not punishment. It is information. And right now Mrs. Holloway has information she did not have before. What she does with it is up to her." I said, "What if she does nothing with it?" He said, "Then the next complaint will find a record already waiting for it." I am in 10th grade now. I take advanced placement English. My teacher this year wrote on my last essay, "Exceptional analysis, college level thinking." I kept that paper. I did not keep it to prove something to Mrs. Holloway. I kept it because I earned it in a classroom where someone expected me to succeed. And I want to remember what that feels like so I can find it again and again, and again for the rest of my life. I want to say one thing to whoever is watching this, who is sitting in a third row, somewhere right now. The person who is telling you that you are not built for this, that you are a waste of time, that you are holding everyone else back. I want you to know something. They do not know your father. They do not know your mother. They do not know who is sitting 3 seats behind you taking notes. They do not know what you read last night or what you are capable of tomorrow. They only know the version of you that walks into their classroom afraid. And afraid is not all you are. It is just the part that they chose to see. My name is Silent Truth. Every voice that was silenced deserves to be heard.